Acknowledge me!
While everyone loves to acknowledge the tribal chief today, if you haven't forgotten, which let's be honest, wrestling fans never do, there was a time when this wasn't the case. In fact, it was completely the opposite. Between 2014 and 2020, it felt like Roman Reigns was probably the most hated man in wrestling. And not intentionally. Where did things go wrong? How did they get fixed? Well, keep watching to find out. This is the story of Roman Reigns, and just how he became WWE's most beloved villain. Now, the easy answer to those two questions I just asked would be that he wasn't Daniel Bryan, but obviously, it's a little more complicated than that. So, let's rewind the clock a bit. Reigns burst onto the WWE scene as part of the unstoppable trio known as The Shield. While Ambrose and Rollins did most of the talking, Reigns let his actions speak for themselves. This allowed him to be shielded from his lack of experience, and his weaknesses were never fully exposed during long matches. Instead, he was given shorter periods in tag matches, where he could showcase his strengths and dominate the opposition. It was a good strategy that allowed Reigns to grow as a performer without overwhelming him with too much too soon. But as he climbed the ranks and approached the top spot, fans began to realize that WWE was prepping him for the throne. It wasn't that Reigns wasn't a talented wrestler, far from it, but he simply didn't have the same relatable quality that Bryan possessed. Fans saw him as a corporate product, a wrestler who was being shoved down their throats by WWE's management. And so, the more WWE pushed Reigns to the top, the more the fans pushed back. In the end, it was a classic case of trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. Reigns may have been a great wrestler, but he was never going to be the next Daniel Bryan. In many minds, Reigns wasn't ready for a position at the top of the card. They thought he was green in the ring and a bit awkward on the mic. But Reigns marched toward it anyway. He and Rollins captured the WWE Tag Team Championships. Then at Survivor Series 2013, Roman tied an event record for eliminations in one match. 2 months later, he made history once again by ousting a record 12 superstars in one night at the 2014 Royal Rumble. But that's where the tone of this story changes. You see, the 2014 Royal Rumble was a turning point in Reigns' story. But not because of anything he did. It was because of the fans' reaction to the company's handling of Daniel Bryan. WWE had missed the mark on what the audience wanted, and the backlash was felt all the way to Reigns' future. The crowd really wanted to see D-Bry win the Rumble and earn his ticket to the main event of WrestleMania 30. And given everything that happened in the lead up to the event, it was the only result that made sense. But WWE didn't even put him in the match. Bryan wrestled Bray Wyatt earlier in the night, and when Rey Mysterio dashed out as the final contestant in the Battle Royale, the beloved luchador heard boos. A returning Batista would eventually win that Rumble, and while Bryan eventually got his WrestleMania moment, the decisions made that night would set the tone for Reigns' next 5 years with the company. After Seth Rollins betrayed the Shield and the group disbanded, WWE became even more adamant on pushing Roman Reigns to the top. Reigns kept his Shield gimmick, sporting a combat vest during his matches and entering through the crowd to the iconic entrance music of the Shield. This was a calculated attempt to capitalize on the group's immense popularity and keep Reigns in the spotlight. Throughout the rest of 2014, Reigns was booked to be an all-conquering force to be reckoned with. But while he was undeniably charismatic, his in-ring work was not quite up to par with some of his peers, including his former teammates. Moreover, Reigns' promos seemed overly scripted and inauthentic, leading fans to reject him. He still managed to achieve some success, but as he continued to dominate, the fans began to turn against him. This trend was never more apparent than the 2015 Royal Rumble. Reigns emerged as the winner of the match, instead of fan favorite Daniel Bryan. But as it became clear that Reigns was going to win, the fans erupted in a chorus of boos and chants of "We want refunds." Even Reigns' cousin, The Rock, couldn't get the fans to cheer for it. Ironically enough, The Rock's early WWE gimmick, Rocky Maivia, was also a clean-cut good guy. Despite the fans initially rejecting him, The Rock's talent and charisma eventually shone through when he turned heel and joined the Nation of Domination. However, WWE still seemed to be making the same mistakes years later with Reigns, despite the fans' clear disapproval. Reigns was being pushed as the company's top hero. After failing to win at WrestleMania 31, Reigns continued to struggle throughout the year. He eventually went on to main event WrestleMania 32 against Triple H and capture the WWE Championship. At WrestleMania 33, Reigns defeated The Undertaker in what WWE intended to be a sort of passing of the torch moment, but it ended up backfiring, and Reigns came out of the match as the most hated man in wrestling. Despite the constant backlash from live crowds and fans at home, Roman Reigns remained a huge global star with great merchandise sales and appealed to children. This led to him being continually booked in prominent roles like John Cena was. He was always kept as a face and not turned heel. However, this constant push didn't stop live crowds from booing him, nor did it prevent fans from tuning out. In response, WWE booked several Shield reunions to give Reigns a rub from his former stablemates. With the Shield back together, Reigns finally got something that resembled the reaction WWE desired. Reigns continued to rack up accomplishments, winning 4 world championships, but the fans' rejection remained constant. But things were about to change. On the October 22, 2018 episode of WWE's Monday Night Raw, the camera panned to the ring where Roman Reigns stood with his slick, long hair pulled back into a ponytail. The red WWE Universal Championship belt sat on his left shoulder, while he held a microphone in his right hand. The crowd had already begun to boo Reigns, as they had been doing for years, expecting Reigns to regurgitate yet another overly scripted promo. But this time, things were different. They were real. He revealed that his real name was Joe, and that he had been battling leukemia for over a decade. The cancer had returned to his body, and he had to give up the Universal title and leave indefinitely for treatment. The news was devastating for fans and wrestlers alike, and the WWE had to figure out how to fill the void left by their top star. But Reigns' announcement also gave him a chance to step away from the Roman Reigns character and connect with fans on a deeper level. For the next few months, Reigns would spend time away from the limelight to focus on his health. Paul Heyman, on the other hand, had just finished up his near-decade-long run with Brock Lesnar. Lesnar had lost the WWE title to Drew McIntyre at WrestleMania 36, and his contract had expired shortly after. Heyman was off television, but he was on the phone with Reigns, helping to devise a plan to bring them back into the fold with a brand new presentation. And what a presentation it was! Reigns and Heyman came up with a character that was kind of a mix between Tony Soprano and Michael Corleone, a cool bad guy who would do anything to maintain his dominance over WWE. Heyman would act as Reigns' on-screen consigliere, his special counsel. It was a storyline that both men hoped would be different and completely dominate the industry. Not only that, but they felt it would be more true to Reigns' real-life personality, specifically his unbridled ambition to be the best. Reigns returned to the WWE on August 23, 2020. Within a week, he won the Universal title for the second time at Payback and turned heel for the first time since 2014, joining forces with Paul Heyman and branding himself as the Tribal Chief. This storyline was praised by critics for its authenticity and for being different from the norm, and it saw Reigns force his real-life cousin Jey Uso to come to his side in a months-long feud where Reigns beat Uso at every turn. The feud was so compelling that Reigns adopted the catchphrase, "Acknowledge me." Throughout 2020 and most of 2021, Reigns' heel championship run was widely lauded by critics. JBL even went as far as saying that Reigns was the most compelling character he had seen on wrestling television in 20 years. The story was considered heads, shoulders, knees, and toes above anything else in WWE by cage-side seats. Alongside the bloodline, Reigns ran rampant, going through opponents such as Kevin Owens, Rey Mysterio, Brock Lesnar, and even John Cena. He has been involved in some blockbuster feuds with Sami Zayn and an epic WrestleMania main event against Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania 39.